Number 3. Kroger. Kroger has long been the reliable backbone of American grocery shopping. For millions of families, it's where the weekly routine begins, picking out fresh produce, grabbing a box of cereal, or making a quick stop for dinner ingredients after work. In many suburbs and mid-sized cities, Kroger isn't just a supermarket, it's an anchor of everyday life. By 2026, even this grocery giant is feeling the strain of an economy where prices keep climbing and customer loyalty isn't what it once was. While Kroger continues to report modest sales and profit growth on paper, the pressure underneath is undeniable. Labor costs are rising. Insurance and utility expenses increase year after year. Freight charges and food inflation steadily erode margins. Adding to the challenge, Kroger's ambitious plan to merge with Albertsons, a $25 billion deal meant to create a stronger, more efficient supermarket network, was blocked by federal regulators. What was intended as a lifeline has instead left hundreds of stores in uncertainty across states like California, Illinois, and Washington. In response, Kroger has quietly begun closing or consolidating locations, focusing only on its strongest markets. Many of these closures don't make national headlines, but their impact is deeply felt. Empty parking lots, shuttered entrances, now hiring signs that never come down, and aisles that once felt familiar now feel less lively. Shoppers are adjusting too. Some are calculating every mile of gas and every item in the cart. Others are turning to discount chains like Aldi or ordering groceries online to save time and limit impulse spending. Even longtime loyal customers admit the difference. Trips feel more expensive and the experience feels less meaningful. Inside the stores, employees notice the changes as well. Shorter shifts, fewer coworkers on the floor, and a sense that the traditional grocery model, large stores, full staff, extensive inventory, is becoming harder to sustain. Kroger isn't collapsing, but it is tightening, trimming, and rethinking how it operates in an increasingly challenging market. You might assume that America's largest retail chains are simply too big, too well-known, and too deeply woven into daily life to ever truly fail. But that assumption no longer holds. Just beneath the routine of everyday shopping, a slow-moving retail collapse is already underway. In 2026, this breakdown isn't arriving all at once. It's happening quietly, one store closure after another. Over the past year alone, thousands of retail locations across the United States have shut their doors for good. Shopping center parking lots that used to overflow on weekends now sit eerily empty, reduced to silent stretches of cracked concrete. Entire pieces of everyday American life, discount retailers, grocery chains, pharmacies, and even fast food restaurants, are shrinking in ways the country hasn't experienced in decades. This story goes far beyond balance sheets and quarterly earnings. At its core, it reflects a shrinking middle class, relentlessly rising living costs, and a growing sense that basic, everyday life in America is becoming harder to afford. From stubborn inflation and wage pressure to organized retail theft draining more than $112 billion from the industry, to online shopping habits that slowly hollow out local communities. The pressures facing retailers today are massive and interconnected. What's happening now isn't the failure of a few weak brands on the fringes. The shock is that this collapse is striking at the heart of American retail. These are the stores people relied on to buy food, clothing, and necessities, the same chains that provided jobs and helped anchor entire neighborhoods. Now, many of them are closing locations, slashing hours, or quietly preparing to vanish from both big cities and small towns. In this countdown, we're taking a closer look at the 10 major retail chains under the most strain across the United States, ranking them based on store closures, financial stress, shifting consumer behavior, and what these changes mean for everyday Americans. Some of these brands are shrinking at an alarming pace. Others are locked in a fight just to stay alive. And by the time we reach number 1, you may find yourself looking at your own neighborhood a little differently. Stay with us because by the end of this video, you'll understand which stores are disappearing first, why this wave of closures is accelerating, and how the next phase of U.S. retail shutdowns could be closer to home than you ever expected. Number 10. Big Lots. For generations, Big Lots quietly served as a safe haven for budget-conscious American families. It was the kind of place where refreshing a living room didn't mean taking on debt. Just a deeply discounted couch, an inexpensive hallway rug, or a few small upgrades that made a house feel like home without wrecking the monthly budget. For many shoppers, Big Lots wasn't flashy, but it was reliable. That image, however, completely unraveled by 2026. The retailer that once thrived by helping households stretch every dollar is now struggling just to stay alive. During 2024 alone, Big Lots permanently closed more than 500 locations, a wave of shutdowns so severe it ranked among the largest retail collapses of the year. By the end of that same period, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and revealed plans to liquidate what remained of its nationwide store network. For a brand built entirely around bargain pricing, the irony is impossible to ignore. Big Lots didn't fail because shoppers stopped looking for affordable goods. It faltered because even low-priced items became too costly for the very customers who relied on them most. As rent, insurance, utilities, transportation, and shipping expenses surged, the company found itself squeezed tightly between rising operating costs and weakening consumer demand. Customers who once filled carts with low-cost furniture, seasonal decor, and impulse buys now walk the aisles far more cautiously. Instead of decorating projects or spontaneous purchases, many leave with only the bare essentials: paper towels, snacks, or a single household item, but only if the price feels manageable. Inflation didn't just eat into profit margins, it drained the sense of excitement that once turned shopping at Big Lots into a small but satisfying treasure hunt. In many communities, these closures feel deeply personal. Longtime residents recall browsing familiar aisles where employees recognize them by name. Former workers describe the emotional shock of arriving for a shift only to find store closing banners hanging across the windows. And in smaller towns, landlords quietly acknowledge a hard truth. Once a Big Lots location shuts down, it can take years for another retailer to fill a space that large. What's vanishing isn't just another discount store. It's a crucial support system for middle-income and fixed-income Americans who are already feeling crushed by rising everyday expenses. And as Big Lots continues to disappear from the retail landscape, it raises an unsettling question. If even discount chains can't survive inflation, what happens next to businesses built entirely on low prices? Number 9. Dollar General. For years, Dollar General functioned as a financial safety net for working-class America. It was the place where a few dollars could still cover dinner, cleaning supplies, and a small sense of stability. While larger retailers pulled out of less profitable areas, Dollar General moved in aggressively, opening stores at a blistering pace, sometimes as many as 3 in a single day, filling rural towns, back roads, and overlooked neighborhoods across the country. But by 2026, that low-price strategy has run into a harsh reality. When the cost of living overwhelms your customers, even the cheapest options stop being affordable. Early in 2026, the company announced plans to shut down roughly 140 underperforming locations, including 96 Dollar General stores and 45 pop-shelf locations. At the same time, company leadership quietly acknowledged something even more troubling. Customers are visiting less often. When they do come in, they spend less. And discretionary purchases, the impulse items that once drove sales, have nearly vanished. A store that used to be packed with bargain household goods and quick add-ons now sees shoppers leave with only the absolute basics: bread, soap, maybe a box of cereal, and only if the price hasn't jumped since the week before. Dollar General's core customer base, lower-income households, has been hit hardest by rising rent, utilities, and food prices. So when shoppers say a dollar store no longer feels like a dollar store, it's not just frustration speaking. It's a warning sign of widespread economic strain affecting millions of Americans all at once. In many regions, a basic bottle of shampoo now costs $6. Snacks can run $4. And trying to stretch $10 across an entire week feels unrealistic. Inside many locations, the pressure is impossible to ignore. Some stores operate with a single employee per shift, expected to juggle cashier duties, stocking, cleaning, and security all at once. Shelves remain partially empty, lights flicker, cardboard boxes stack up in the aisles. These aren't signs of neglect. They're indicators of a retail model being pushed far beyond its breaking point. Dollar General isn't disappearing entirely. In fact, the company still plans to open hundreds of new locations in higher-performing markets. But the closures reveal an uncomfortable truth. The communities that relied on Dollar General the most are often the same places where the business model can no longer survive. Number 8. 7-Eleven. For decades, seeing the bright glow of a 7-Eleven sign meant something reassuring. No matter the time of day or the part of town, convenience was always just a few steps away. It was the go-to stop for overnight workers, the last resort for late-night medicine runs, and often the only place open when the rest of the city had gone dark. But by 2026, that familiar symbol of nonstop convenience is quietly losing its shine. Slowly, steadily, and in neighborhoods where it matters most. In late 2024, 7 & I Holdings, 7-Eleven's parent company, announced plans to close roughly 444 stores across North America, marking one of the largest pullbacks the convenience store industry has seen in years. The reasons behind the closures aren't shocking, but they are deeply concerning. Operating costs continue to climb. Insurance premiums have surged. And rising crime has made running 24-hour locations increasingly dangerous and expensive. Some franchise owners report dealing with shoplifting incidents dozens of times every single week. Others say they simply can't find employees willing to work overnight shifts anymore, no matter the pay. In many cities, the consequences are impossible to miss. Stores that once stayed open around the clock now shut their doors at midnight for the first time in decades. Metal security gates cover windows that used to stay brightly lit all night. Credit card machines sit behind plastic shields. And in communities that depended on 7-Eleven for late-night essentials, medicine, baby formula, or even a gallon of milk, these closures feel like more than a business move. They feel like a withdrawal. What often goes unnoticed is how deeply the modern American lifestyle depends on the assumption that convenience never sleeps. But when the math no longer works, the 24/7 model begins to crack. Electricity costs, staffing challenges, insurance, and security expenses now outweigh the profits from midnight coffee runs and early morning snack purchases. For seniors, overnight workers, and low-income families, losing a nearby 7-Eleven isn't just inconvenient, it's destabilizing. The lights that once symbolized safety, access, and reliability now flicker with uncertainty, signaling a broader shift in how much convenience America can still afford. Number 7. Best Buy. There was a time when stepping inside a Best Buy felt like getting a preview of the future. Bright rows of laptops glowed across the floor. Demo speakers filled the space with bass. Massive television walls lit up entire aisles. For many Americans, this was the first place they ever physically interacted with new technology. Families spent weekends testing gadgets together. Teenagers saved their money for their first pair of real headphones. Best Buy wasn't just a store. It was part of a shared experience. By 2026, that familiar blue and yellow world is noticeably fading. Best Buy isn't collapsing outright, but it is steadily contracting in ways that reveal a major shift in how Americans buy technology. Since 2020, the company has closed dozens of locations, including 24 stores during fiscal year 2024, with plans to shut an additional 10 to 15 locations through fiscal 2026. On the surface, those numbers may not sound dramatic. But taken together, the direction is clear. Fewer stores, smaller footprints, and a quiet pullback from markets that once depended on hands-on tech retail. The problem isn't declining interest in electronics. Americans still love new gadgets. What's changed is the willingness to visit a physical store to buy them. Today, many shoppers browse at Best Buy, compare features in person, then place their actual order on Amazon, where prices are often lower, shipping is faster, and checkout doesn't involve a line. At the same time, the costs of operating massive tech showrooms have become increasingly hard to justify. Rent for large retail spaces can reach staggering levels, especially in urban areas. Add insurance, utilities, employee wages, and the constant pressure to refresh inventory, and the financial equation starts to unravel. For older customers, this shift feels especially personal. Many say they dislike buying electronics online. They want to touch the product, hear it work, ask real questions, and get guidance from someone knowledgeable. But with fewer specialists on the sales floor and fewer stores overall, that experience is slowly disappearing. A showroom without staff doesn't feel futuristic. It feels empty and uncertain. Best Buy isn't vanishing, but it is clearly transforming. The company is leaning more heavily into online sales, smaller format locations, and automated fulfillment models. And as those large blue storefronts quietly fade from America's retail landscape, one reality becomes impossible to ignore. When even technology retailers struggle to justify physical space, the consequences extend far beyond electronics alone. Number 6. Subway. For years, Subway served as the unofficial lunchroom of America. The aroma of freshly baked bread, the clatter of toppings behind the counter, and the familiar, "What can I get for you today?" It was a small, comforting ritual millions of people barely even noticed. At its peak, with over 27,000 locations, Subway could be found in towns where it outnumbered gas stations, schools, and even local diners. It was fast, predictable, and everywhere, a constant in the daily routines of countless Americans. But by 2026, that once unstoppable sandwich empire is shrinking faster than many expected. In 2024 alone, Subway closed more than 600 U.S. locations, dropping its national footprint below 20,000 stores for the first time in decades. Compared with its mid-2010s peak, the chain has lost over 7,600 locations, a staggering reversal for what was once the world's largest restaurant brand. The reasons go deeper than simple competition. Customers complain that the quality has slipped, bread that doesn't feel fresh, vegetables lacking crispness, and employees stretched too thin to provide care. Overexpansion left many outlets competing for the same customers, squeezing franchise owners' margins so tightly that bankruptcy became a real threat in some cases. At the same time, American tastes have evolved. People increasingly crave food that feels authentic, local, and handcrafted, rather than a standardized formula repeated thousands of times a day. Yet the biggest shift isn't in the menu, it's in the atmosphere. Longtime patrons describe the experience as impersonal. One viewer wrote, "Subway used to feel warm. Now it just feels tired." That sentiment echoes across thousands of stores. Less joy, less attention, and fewer moments of genuine connection. Subway's parent company is trying to adapt, experimenting with streamlined menus, consolidating franchises, and modernizing store designs. But whether these efforts can reverse nearly a decade of decline remains uncertain. Number 5. Walgreens. For decades, Walgreens has been the heartbeat of countless American neighborhoods. It was the place you stopped for a prescription refill, grabbed a few household essentials on your way home, or picked up cold medicine late at night. In many towns, especially in rural areas, the local Walgreens wasn't just a store. It was often the closest thing to dependable healthcare within miles. But by 2026, that sense of reliability is quietly fading. In late 2024, Walgreens announced one of the largest pharmacy pullbacks in U.S. history. Roughly 1,200 stores set to close over a 3-year period, representing about 14% of its nationwide footprint. Of those, around 500 locations were expected to shut down in 2026 alone. For a company with more than 8,700 stores, the message is clear. The traditional pharmacy model no longer works everywhere. The pressures are coming from every direction. Rent and insurance costs continue to climb. Pharmacy wages have risen sharply as staffing shortages ripple through the healthcare system. And theft, which was once a minor nuisance, has escalated into a significant financial threat that corporations can't ignore. In some stores, shelves are now protected behind plexiglass. In others, entire aisles are locked, forcing customers to wait for assistance just to complete a simple errand. Ironically, these security measures often push shoppers away, reducing the very sales the company depends on. The human impact is immediate. In parts of Arizona, Ohio, and the rural South, seniors now have to drive 20 miles or more just to pick up their prescriptions. One 69-year-old customer put it simply, "I don't know how to order medicine online. I just want to talk to a pharmacist." That small statement captures a larger reality. For millions of Americans, a pharmacy isn't just a retail outlet. It's the last place where healthcare still feels personal. Walgreens calls these closures a strategic reset. But for communities losing their closest pharmacy, it feels much more like a retreat, leaving behind quiet, anxious spaces where certainty and trust once lived. Number 4. Macy's. For generations, Macy's was more than just a department store. It was an experience. Sparkling holiday displays, escalators gliding past endless racks of clothing, and the iconic red star glowing over city streets created a sense of wonder. Families made memories there. Teenagers bought their first suits there. For countless Americans, Macy's wasn't merely a place to shop. It was a ritual, woven into the fabric of growing up. By 2026, that tradition is quietly fading, like the last lights of a long holiday season. In early 2024, Macy's announced a sweeping restructuring plan aimed at reshaping the company from the ground up. Over 150 underperforming stores are set to close within 3 years, including 66 closures in 2026 alone. This isn't a small adjustment. It's a retreat from entire regions, suburbs, malls, and downtown districts, places where Macy's once anchored the local retail landscape and drew crowds week after week. Inside the stores that remain open, the decline is visible. Wide aisles are sparsely stocked. Clearance racks have multiplied across floors. Lighting that once felt warm now seems tired. Employees describe the atmosphere as almost museum-like in its quiet. Some have shared the emotional weight of lowering the Macy's sign for the last time, a moment that felt like a piece of America itself was disappearing. The reasons behind the decline are familiar but powerful. Online shopping has redefined convenience. Rising rents and labor costs push department stores into difficult territory, and shoppers who once visited Macy's weekly now scrutinize every discretionary purchase. Even the legendary holiday rush, once the biggest retail event of the year, can no longer guarantee the crowds it used to. As Macy's continues to transform, some former locations are being repurposed into apartments, offices, fulfillment centers, and even schools. It's a stark reflection of the times. What once symbolized aspiration and excitement is now being adapted for practicality and everyday utility. Number 2. Fast food chains. For generations, America ran on fast food. It was the unofficial fuel for busy families, night shift workers, long road trips, and lazy childhood weekends. A quick burger, a cheap soda, a familiar menu. Fast food wasn't glamorous, but it was reliable. It fit seamlessly into the rhythm of daily life. By 2026, that rhythm is starting to break, and the cracks are becoming impossible to ignore. The biggest shift is simple. Fast food is no longer cheap. Between 2019 and 2024, menu prices at major chains like McDonald's and Burger King rose roughly 40%, driven by higher wages, increasing ingredient costs, and the most persistent inflation seen in a generation. Meals that once felt like an everyday treat now regularly push $10 or $12. Families who once grabbed takeout weekly now think twice. Young adults who grew up on dollar menus say the value just isn't there anymore. This change is hitting restaurants hard. Across the country, hundreds of fast food locations have quietly closed as traffic slows and operating costs climb. Franchise owners report skyrocketing electricity bills, rent, and insurance. At the same time, customers are ordering fewer combo meals and more individual items. Even marketing efforts like $5 meal deals, designed to lure back budget-conscious diners, haven't fully reversed the trend. But the decline isn't only economic, it's emotional. For many Americans, fast food has lost a sense of soul. The experience now feels more automated, more rushed, and increasingly disconnected. One 60-year-old customer put it plainly, "Taking my kids to McDonald's used to feel like a treat. Now it just feels empty." That fading joy, the transformation of a ritual into a transaction, is reshaping how the country eats. Meanwhile, younger generations are gravitating toward healthier, locally sourced, or boutique-style options. Middle-aged consumers are more conscious of long-term health impacts. And older adults increasingly crave real, nourishing meals rather than hurried calories squeezed between long workdays. Fast food isn't disappearing entirely, but it is steadily losing the cultural dominance it held for half a century. And if the chains that once fed America at low cost are struggling, the question becomes inevitable. What happens when the biggest, most essential retailers of all start to feel the same pressure? Number 1. Walmart. For half a century, Walmart has been at the center of everyday American life. It's where families stocked up on groceries, where parents grabbed school supplies, and where retirees strolled the aisles each morning as part of their routine. In small towns, Walmart wasn't just a store. It was the economic heartbeat, the jobs, the foot traffic, the tax revenue, and the sense of community it created. By 2026, even this retail giant is starting to feel the strain of a landscape that is shifting beneath its feet. Despite generating more than $600 billion in annual revenue, Walmart faces a growing, silent threat: retail theft and organized shoplifting. National estimates suggest shrink costs U.S. retailers over $112 billion annually, and Walmart has acknowledged that these losses are becoming impossible to fully absorb. In certain locations, especially those grappling with high crime or rising operating costs, stores have been forced to close, often with little warning. When a Walmart shuts its doors, the consequences ripple through the community. Hundreds of jobs vanish. Local tax revenue disappears. Entire shopping plazas go dark. And the pressures don't end there. Wage increases, climbing utility bills, higher insurance premiums, and the expense of securing massive stores all chip away at profit margins. At the same time, shoppers, particularly middle-income households, are tightening their spending, making fewer trips, and shifting increasingly toward online ordering. Walmart's response has been heavy investment in automation, robotics, and AI-driven logistics. While these moves improve efficiency, they also signal a long-term trend toward fewer physical stores and leaner staffing. For older Americans, the change feels deeply personal. Many describe Walmart as more than a store, a familiar routine in an unpredictable world. When their neighborhood location closes, they don't just lose convenience, they lose a sense of belonging. Walmart isn't collapsing, but it is evolving. And if a corporation of this size is shrinking, retreating, and rethinking its footprint, the truth becomes clear. The forces transforming American retail aren't temporary, they're structural. What disappears with Walmart isn't just a store, it's the center of gravity for entire communities. The story unfolding across these 10 major retailers is more than a series of isolated struggles. It's a sign of a deeper transformation reshaping daily life in America. Rising costs, tightening margins, and the relentless pace of online shopping have created conditions for a retail apocalypse, forcing even the most familiar brands to retreat or reinvent themselves. Communities feel the impact first. Longer drives for essentials, fewer late-night options, and darkened plazas where once thriving stores stood. Yet within this disruption, something new may emerge. Smaller shops and local businesses are stepping into spaces once dominated by national chains, rebuilding connection in ways that large retailers no longer can. And as the retail apocalypse of 2026 continues to unfold, the question becomes personal. How close will the next store closure come to your own neighborhood?